Back with you on the late edition, and thanks for staying on. The South African Federation of Trade Unions has slammed KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's remarks about organised labour and the unemployment rate in the country. The general told a recent crime prevention gathering in Durban that demands for higher salaries by unions is hampering efforts to fill policing vacancies. What's your take on this? You can give us your thoughts on 072-110-5584. You can call us on 010-594-6010. Otherwise, engage with us on X at Newzroom 405. Let's speak now to Saftu's General Secretary, Zwelinzima Vavi. We also have COSATU spokesperson, Zanele Sabela, as well as Labour analyst, Patrick Deely. Good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on this evening. Let me begin with you as well, considering that you have written this particular statement, but I know other unions as well have voiced their thoughts. Others are saying this is dangerously divisive. You are saying the perspective risks distorting public understanding of a far more serious issue. Expressing a dissenting view should never be viewed, I suppose, as an attempt to being divisive. Don't you think that it limits the value of dialogue?
Well, thank you very much for inviting us, by the way. Let's just say this. This is a very, very serious matter to us. The General Mkhwanazi, who is otherwise a person we have given support when he came out in public and in Parliament to point out some very disturbing trends inside the police. We came out to say, hooray, we need people like him to continuously assure the public that not all of the people in senior positions are corrupt and can be corrupted. So let's separate the issue. The point, however, that he is raising at this particular moment is very disturbing in the context of a divided society. We are a class-based society. There are people who are panting every day for views that will reinforce the exploitation of the working class. And there are people on the other side of the class divide who are continuously involved in a struggle to ensure that there is justice, there is equity, there is fairness, and that the provisions of the Constitution, in particular to fair labor standards, are observed all the time. And that is us on the other side.
Zanele, let me bring you in as well here. I'll come back to Duvav. I know you want to get into the nub of the matters. We'll come to them in a moment. But Zanele, let's just get this one out. The view that, of course, some have been expressing, I'm sure you've been looking at social media, you've been listening to debates on radio stations, that maybe sometimes the union is intolerant to a dissenting view. There are some in society that hold the view of Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, and they think that it's a valid conversation to have.
I'm not even sure where to start. A dissenting view is always welcome, but this one is actually misleading. It is misplaced. It shouldn't be happening, because what he is saying, for one, the general says that workers in this country are paid too much. That's not true. In a country where we have a minimum wage of 28 rand, 56 or 73 cents or something like that. It's under 30 rands. And when the minimum wage came in, people, like farm workers were earning 6 rand an hour. So in a situation like this, where actually he's talking about the people that he has oversight on, police people don't get paid too much. They really don't. They actually, some are living in backyards. They use the train to get to work. And these people are people who actually work in very dangerous environments. So for him to say that doesn't make sense, especially considering that constantly, like even Otatu Vavi was just making a joke right now about the suspended police minister. But the suspended police minister, before he was suspended, was constantly asking for the budget for his department to be improved, precisely because of that, because police are not being paid too much, and they actually are leaving the force to go to greener pastures because they're not being paid enough.
Patrick, the demand for higher wage debate, particularly in developing countries, has been debated, I'm sure, for decades now. There are papers by the World Bank, there are papers by many other analysts. And what comes out of there is that it creates a complex trade-off. Potentially raising worker income reduces poverty, yes. It increases informality, though, as well, and it reduces the prospects of companies employing more people. I suppose if it works for companies, it works for government as well. Is that an inappropriate conversation that is not relevant to South Africa right now?
Look, I think it's an appropriate conversation, but I think generalizations on a particular aspect of labor relations and trying to build constructive, good, sound working relationships and only focusing on one in a generalized way, in a way pointing fingers at the union movement for supporting their members to get the best deal in the workplace, I think is divisive. I mean, I agree with that notion, and what it does, it underlines the sort of the hostilities between employers and employees that we've seen for so long in this country, and which we definitely just so want to fix. And these kinds of comments only drive the wedge between and create more hostility between, especially at a higher level, when it's a generalized statement made about the entire labor force against all employers. That is, I think, not helpful for what we need to do to look at the specifics of what would make a productive relationship between management or between employers and laborers, in which employers are getting bang for their buck, as it were. They are paying a fair wage for a fair return for the risk that they take on the one hand, and employees on the other, for the contribution that they make, are getting a fair deal for their contributions and are being recognized for it, not just in money terms, but as human beings and so on. And I think that's a trick that somehow these kinds of statements oversheds and drives us more away from trying to solve these very complex problems and mechanisms in the labor market that you have referred to.
Dr. Vavi, I suppose we can just get to some of these issues now. I mean, I think for as long as I can remember having conversations with you, we could maybe go back even to the third administration, but I know you might even want to point it to the second administration even of government. We're in the sixth administration now. We are still having the same conversation. And we are always told that government, when faced with higher costs, sectors are forced to reduce the number of employees they hire, even though you and I would have a conversation to say the demand for labor is still there. We still need police. We still need nurses. We still need teachers. But finance minister after finance minister after finance minister, when they give out the budget, they will tell us that we need to tighten our belt because the cost is just high.
Well, the belts are now sitting literally on the bones. Tightening the belt now beyond this point actually will break the bones in the waist. And the irony is that it is not the workers, it's not the generals who are saying to themselves, we need to cut our wages. I was just looking at the annual salary of a general who is a provincial commissioner. They are earning 1.8 million rands annually. And he's certainly not talking about himself when he says that the salaries are too much. He can volunteer and ask his salary be cut by half, to take from 1.8 million to about 900,000 rands. He won't agree to do that because he knows that he has obligations to his family, to his house, to his school kids, and to everything else that he has to do as a human being. But he wants to point the finger to ordinary workers, the warrant officers, the constables, and the other juniors in the service who earn way below what he is currently earning. So that's the starting point. That's why we felt that this call is rather hypocritical. And I think it is very divisive. I agree with what Zanele is saying there, and absolutely divisive.
Yeah.
The point that I was trying to make is that what he says falls right into the hands of the conservatives in society. There is always people who champion neoliberalism, justifying austerity programs, budget cuts to policing, education, healthcare, and home affairs, everything, leaving the crisis we now have in society, where even in the police services, if you remember the now departed National Commissioner Sithole, before he left, he said we needed at least 60,000 more police officials.
Yeah.
And the government have only employed 10,000 more police since he made that particular call.
Yeah.
We are sitting way below the United Nations norms and standards when it comes to the number of police officials you need to police a citizens. And in terms of the international standards, you need at least one police official for 220 people. In South Africa, we are sitting with one police official for 427. So yes, there is a need to employ more people, but you can't do that by cutting wages of the existing police. You need to move away from the austerity and from the budget cuts.
Let's stay right there. Let's stay right there. We need to move away from austerity and budget cuts. So I want us to then get clarity on this. Is government faced with high costs? Because you're saying move away from cuts. Government saying we are faced with high costs, so we need to cut. You're saying no, don't cut. So which one is true? Is government faced with high costs right now? And is that portion of high costs concentrated in significant monies being paid to labor?
This is what government is faced with, is self-imposed pain. Government chose to reduce corporate taxes from 52% at their highest point in 1992 to 27%. In that process, it lost the opportunity of having billions and billions to build better schools, better police stations, clinics, public hospitals, more universities, and so forth. Secondly, everyone in the labor movement and many important voices, Archbishop Desmond Tutu left saying so, calling for the introduction of a wealth tax, a solidarity tax, in a country that is the most unequal in the whole world, where 1% of its population occupies and or is sitting on what 45% of the population is earning as a wealth. So the government have refused to introduce that.
Yeah.
All of us were saying it was a mistake for the government to allow the removal of the speed bumps, the exchange controls, to the point that it even allowed local firms to list their headquarters all over the world, and therefore facilitated the movement of resources so desperately needed to develop South Africa here by putting that policy up. Government won't listen. And secondly, we have been saying to the government, if you can't develop when you have a low inflation regime of 1 to 6%, which can only be realized through a blunt instrument of high interest rates. You can't want to develop as a nation when you make the price of money so expensive that it becomes a deterrent to the people who wants to start businesses in South Africa. Government won't listen. It wants to only listen to the banks who are catching up on high interest rates.
All right.
We have been making all manner of proposals. Stop illicit cash outflows. We're losing 300 billion rands every year. Government won't act.
I'm going to come to those strategies that you say we must employ, but I've got some callers that want to engage us. Mike in Springs, good evening, Mike. Where do you sit on this debate on labor costs and its impact on employment?
Yeah, ngiyabulisa mfoka baba kubaba uVava, although I'm not going to use English. Let me use isiZulu.
Okay,
because I'm sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Ngiyabuza nje la kubo baba uVava uma sikhuluma ngokuthi amapay wabantu aphansi noma phezulu, but abo baba uVava ngiyabuza nje ukuthi lama 1% awadonswa ama-union kubasebenzi bonke South Africa, iKhosathu, iSaftu, iNUMSA, oNUMSA, bonke labantu aba-affiliate kuma-union like aboKhosathu. Le mali yakhona ekugcineni ngoba kunama-companies avalwayo, but imali yabasebenzi ayibasizi ekugcineni, bayishonisaphi njengama-union ngoba silindele ukuthi engabe bona bathatha le mali besave imisebenzi yabasebenzi ukuze amakhampani eqhubeke esebenze. Imali lokuthiwa iKhosathu, iSaftu, iNUMSA isiza ngani ekugcineni ngoba sisebenza 40 years. Ekugcineni imali ediductwe kuma-salaries wethu ayisizi ngalutho. Akekho esitshela ukuthi umsebenzi wayo yini.
All right, Mike, appreciate it. Mike's in Springs. There's Siviwe in Masiphumelele. Good evening, Siviwe. What do you make of the comments made by Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi?
Yes, good evening, everyone. What I want to raise is that unions, they work hand in hand with employees. Most of the time, you'll find out that 90% of the contributions, they're advocating for employees. So, and employees voluntarily leave work after they make a decision according to what the union is offering them. So I think it is being overstated that unions are causing this whole fracas of employees running away. I think General Mkhwanazi is overstating it.
All right, Sifu, I appreciate you. Thank you very much for coming on. So there's a question for you, Zanele. I suppose Mike is suggesting that part of the solutions would also need to come from the unions themselves, making a contribution to assist with salaries in some instances where companies even shut down, yet you've been collecting 1% from the very same employees, and that doesn't seem to help them. We'll come back to that in a moment when we continue next. Stay with us. Back at you, and thanks for staying on. Saftu's General Secretary Zwelinzima Vavi, Khosatu's spokesperson Nhlanhla Sabela, as well as Labour analyst Patrick Deely, still with us and taking your thoughts as well. 072-110-5584, 010-594-60-106. Nhlanhla, let's come back to you. I mean, the issue that's been raised, and I've been hearing it being raised also throughout the day, that the conversation sometimes tends to focus a lot either on businesses or on government, but the interests that unions hold are quite significant. Others saying amounting to millions and maybe even more. That they never have their skin in the game, but they expect, for example, government and business to be always stretching beyond what they are saying is their capacity.
So, Thabo, you'll be surprised that some unions, actually, the monthly contribution from a worker is still 30 rands in 2025. A worker is contributing only 30 rands per month for this protection that unions are providing. So let's talk about the reason why companies would be closing. It's because this economy is in trouble and has been for a very long time. It hasn't grown beyond 1% since 2008. Unemployment, as we all know, is sitting at 42.9%. And the reason for that is, one, we inherited an economy where actually what General Mkhwanazi is asking for workers to be paid peanuts, was actually happening. Black workers were being paid peanuts. And as a result, we sit here and we become, like Tatu Vavi said, the most unequal society in the world. And because of that, it still continues. But not only that, during state capture, you had these institutions actually hollowed out and looted. And therefore, Eskom couldn't provide the energy that is required to fuel this economy. Transnet is still broken, although Eskom looks like it's going towards recovery. Transnet is still broken, and it's unable to do what it needs to do. When Transnet is working effectively, then it supports industries such as mining, agriculture, and manufacturing. And so where we sit, and then you have Metro Rail, which also was looted, but during COVID, it was vandalized. People built shacks on top of the railways. And so it needs to be ferrying workers to and from work at a very affordable price because it is highly subsidized. Yeah. Those are not working. And I've just chosen those three because they are crucial to this economy. We also have a situation where our municipalities have collapsed and are not delivering the services that are supposed to make sure that this economy starts driving itself. We had that situation where Clover had to move because the municipality it was in wasn't delivering the services that it needed, and therefore it couldn't do business. Yeah. And so it had to move, leaving behind a ghost town. And we have these problems. Like now we're sitting with the situation with tariffs, and you see how that is already having an impact in the Eastern Cape, where Goodyear is closing. Mercedes-Benz had paused business for a month. It had stopped manufacturing cars for a month. Yeah. And so you see all of those things. And then I think what my esteemed panelist had said about the fact that we to just choose one factor and zone in on it and then say this is responsible is actually not the big picture and is not true. And therefore, you need to be looking at all the factors that are on here. And just saying workers should be paid peanuts in 2025 is not helpful at all.
So Patrick, I mean, considering all these issues, I mean, there are plenty, capital flight, corruption, dysfunctional municipalities, SOEs that are not doing what they are supposed to be doing, logistics that are not working, so an economy that literally has not moved and is not growing. In the midst of all that is then the demand for what unions would say a living wage. Others are saying, well, the elasticity of the wage demand is quite high. So these are high wages. Is that the solution?
Look, it's not the only solution of a range of possibilities. The fact is, there's a big difference in what the purpose of state institutions, government institutions is concerning. As opposed to private sector businesses and so on. They've got different interests, they've got different ways of being financed, and they have different services to provide. And I think that if we take it down to its basics, where are jobs going to come from? Are they going to come from the public sector, or are they going to come from the private sector? Are they going to come from big businesses, medium-sized businesses, small businesses, new businesses? Where are the jobs going to come from? My colleagues have talked about the economy and the problems of the economic cake on a macro scale and the reasons for it, which we will know. And the problem is, of course, that the cake is shrinking, the population is rising, and more people are being pushed out to the fringe. And what we need to do is grow the economic cake. And so the obvious question is, how do you grow the economic cake? Take a simple example that if you want to create a job, well, you first have to create a business. So if you want to create a business, who's going to do it? Someone is going to take money out of his or her pocket or collect other money from other people, come up with a business idea, start a business and take the risk, invest their own money in the business. And if they invest their money in the business and it starts working well, they'll employ one person, then another person, and the multiplication factor happens. But they're only going to do that if they have an enabling environment, not only legally, but on a range of issues that motivates them, excites them, gets them interested and that this is the place to do it. I can make a go of this business. I'm prepared to take the risk, and I'm going to take the risk. I want to get people who are going to help me to do that, and I want to share the cake that we grow from nothing. You put it in the oven, you're just using the analogy, and you grow it, and then we can see how we can share this thing equitably. And if you can get a multiplication factor like that going, as in many countries they have, in other words, from the bottom up, from at individual business levels, to get that entrepreneurial sense going, we won't be as burdened with the heaviness of the macro problems that we continually see, and that we exhaust ourselves by trying to solve at a macro level, when I think the action is done where the grass grows. Get the grass growing, get beautiful fields of businesses going, and incentivize that environment. Don't make it difficult. Don't overregulate it. Embrace employees joining unions and talking to unions, and to help them to get into the process of growing a particular business and related businesses and so on. And I think a time has come for this hostility between labor and unions, and labor and businesses to cool off the rhetoric of that the employers are the enemy somehow, and that you're working with an enemy in that hostile environment is not what the kind of incentive people want to have if they're considering putting money into a business. Not only all of us fellow South Africans, but people who want to invest in this country. They want to know that there's going to be reasonable management of their risk, so that they can grow the businesses to grow the job.
All right.
That's the only way. It won't happen otherwise.
All right, thanks, Patrick. There. Let's take some more calls. Mvubo, you're in Johannesburg. Good evening.
Hey, how are you?
Well, hope you're well too, Mvubo. What is on your mind? Go ahead.
Look, what's on my mind is I hope I'm not deviating from the discussion. But I think what's important here is that, in my view, alternatives were had, in that when you look at COSATU and its affiliates, all of them had what one can call investment wings. And those investment wings were worth, or are worth, billions of rands. And if we were really serious, that would have, in fact, addressed the joblessness that we are talking about currently. Now,
how? Be more explicit. How? They've got billions in investment vehicles. How would that have helped jobs?
No. I'm saying billions of rands in investments, workers' investments.
Yeah.
And if companies close, those billions would have or could have been used to revive those companies, to employ people. Now, the Vavis of this world are aware of that. And they've got an obligation to answer as to what happened to those billions of the workers' investments. So that, in my view, would address the problems that we are faced with now, especially the problems of joblessness.
All right, Mvubo, let's leave it there. Sisa in Durban, hope you can hear us there. Sisa, good evening, welcome.
All right, thank you so much. I can hear you very well.
Go for it.
I hope that I will be able to dive deep to the issue so that we all probably do justice to what Mkhwanazi would have said. I think, to be fair to Mkhwanazi was looking at that angle at the policing level, not at the micro-integrated strategic level, wherein you would want to talk about what is the genesis of this unemployment that is in South Africa. But what I want to say, these are regrettable remarks from him. I think he was misinformed, and I also think that he didn't prepare enough to go there, because you wouldn't want to look at the situation that is structural and that is systematic only at a very narrow angle. when you look at that unemployment and then you begin to talk about salaries, increase of salaries or expensive salaries, as though they are expensive. I mean, police are not paid equal to the job they're doing. They put their lives on the risk for the people of South Africa. So the money they are getting isn't really complementary to the work they do. So I think Mkhwanazi is very misinformed today. Also, to end with this point, South Africa is a very unique country. Remember, we come from the dark days of the apartheid system, colonial system, slavery system. All of these systems have actually turned our people into half humans, and they've really humanized and discriminated black society in particular. These resources, South Africa is a country that is controlled by constitution, and one of the key pillars that are coming from Freedom Charter says this country belongs to all who live in it, and we shall partake equally in the resources of this country. I mean, we all got told, or we are always told about the issue of investment. Whose interest is that? Who benefits out of that? Are the people of South Africa benefiting equally to the resources that are mined from South Africa? The answer is no. Now, which means our problem is very systematic. Our problem isn't about the lack of employment, but it's about the cartel. It's about the monopolic system. It's about, the fixing that has happened in our economy. Our economy is very exclusive in nature. Okay. It's capital inclined, it's imperialist inclined. That kind of a situation needs to be sorted out.
All right,
and our constitution must be amended so that we deal with these systematic issues. Otherwise, we inherited a capitalist system, an imperialist inclined system. Now, we can then, therefore, talk about high rate of employment in a capitalist system. We need an integrated socialist, communist, and capitalist part of the economy so that the economy will work for the people of South Africa. That is what my...
Got you. Thanks, Sisa there in Durban. Let's take some of your WhatsApp messages as well. Below, Joseph, trade unions have the right to ask for higher wages balanced with their needs and inflation rate. I think that's what you wanted to say. This cannot be equated to hampering employment. Mkhwanazi has a valid point. Government hypocritically pays EPWP workers 3,500 but wants to the private sector workers, including domestic workers, to be paid more than 5,000. It doesn't make sense. A high unemployment rate should mean low labor costs. Demand and supply should apply. Anonymous there. Temba from Kempton Park. Good evening, Thabo. Fully agree with General Mkhwanazi's remarks that too many people lost their jobs because of trade unions that encourage people to strike, then dump them after being fired. Some of the thoughts there that are coming from you. All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back and we'll get some final remarks from our panel in a moment. Stay with us. Back to our conversation tonight. Saftu General Secretary Nhlanhla Vavi, COSATU spokesperson Nhlanhla Sabela, Labour analyst Patrick Deely still with us, and lots of your reaction also tonight. Vavi, let's wrap up our thoughts here. Grow the economy, don't over-regulate, we'll be fine. Other callers are saying, well, even the unions must get their skin in the game. Maybe invest in SOEs yourself so that you can also be involved in paying salaries so that these companies don't close down and people don't get retrenched. These are some of the strategic solutions that we could employ.
Well, we can talk about the solutions, certainly, but the point that we were making at the beginning is this, that the statements by General Mkhwanazi are exceedingly unfortunate in that they are reinforcing right-wing conservative views being held by some in society that see the constitution that protects the right of workers to belong to trade unions, to collectively bargain and to strike as the source of the problem and a source of the lack of economic growth in society. And there's a views held by the right-wing economist in society that sees the labor laws from the LRA to basic conditions of employment, employment equity, occupational health and safety that provide some basic protections to workers as a problem. And they usually blame them for lack of growth and prosperity. And unfortunately, the remarks of the general tell workers that he needs, in order to fight crime, that you are a problem and that we must be cutting your salaries so that we can employ more people. And he's basically not joining us to say to the government, increase the taxes, introduce solidarity tax, ensure that we industrialize our economy again, diversify our trade relationships with Africa so that we can develop our economy, build local industries, and build our manufacturing sector again. Stop the bullyism by the American imperialist government now by ensuring that we speak to and engage with the Americans as a bloc from the BRICS to the south, and to say to them, we won't be bullied by you anymore. We will trade as equal partners, and we're not going to allow you to use trade policies to bully us so that you can get what you want politically, getting us not to speak about genocide in Israel and or to want to choose the friends of South Africa and so forth. Mkhwanazi is just saying to workers, you are on your own, and I'm earning a general salary, 1.8 minimum and going up, and you who take home 12,000 rands, basically, the constables takes 12,000. He says cut those salaries in order to employ. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. You can't ask somebody who takes home 12,500 and who has been a constable for 10 years to get a salary cut. And when unions fight, even in a sector that is not even allowed to strike, is declared essential services, such as the police, then you take the guns into the most vulnerable sections of your own members, and you allow government to continue with austerity budget cuts programs, which is the source of the problem of low pay, of debilitating police stations that have no equipment, and you don't address the source of the problem, you take it out. That's unfortunately very cheap populist stance that is regrettable, and we hope that we can have a sit down to tell him how damaging that statement is to the interest of the workers in this country.
So, Nhlanhla, the indication, I suppose, that is being suggested in that statement is that then there will be some substitution of factors. So government may substitute workers. He says police, for example, for a CCTV camera or with other factors like technology instead of being able to put people in those jobs. What do you say to that?
The general is really misinformed, because if you put a camera, and then what? Because if you put a camera, then you need the police to actually go chase those criminals. If they are they are still caught in action, or later on to be able to identify them. So you can't completely get rid of the human factor. It will always be there. So much so that the budget that was eventually signed actually has provided for nationally 4,000 more police officers to be hired. It's a very small number when you consider that that's a national number. And we're talking about 10,000 police leaving the force every year. And so it is those problems that, the general seems to be unaware of. And the fact that if you have a policeman who, like Mr. Vavi said, who takes home 12,000, but meantime, when he goes to work, organized criminal syndicates are actually offering very lucrative bribes. This is why now we're sitting where we're sitting and we're waiting with bated breath for a commission of inquiry, because people are being offered bribes because they're taking home absolutely nothing. And we can't expect them to put their lives on the line and still say, after you take home 12,000, then it must be cut and you must take home 6,000 rands. The general must really go back and think about this one. It's really shocking, especially since he was reading from his cell phone. I wonder if he actually spoke to someone to say, can you help me with my speech? Because that's what he should be doing next, so that he doesn't offend and he doesn't say to the people that are working for him that they're worth nothing. Thank you.
Patrick, final words from your side. I mean, there are, of course, those who would be of a different view as far as enforcement of wage laws or labor laws in the country. They're saying that maybe they're not regulated enough. They must be enforced even harder. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, the labor law, we've got a lot of labor laws. We've got minimum labor laws, we've got collective bargaining labor laws, and we've got rights labor laws, the the Labor Relations Act and so on. So, the laws themselves, are fine. It's the manner in which they are applied. And the application of labor laws, I don't think needs more regulation. I think they are adequately supplied at the moment. There are obviously areas which are sought to be regulated, to assist vulnerable workers who are more exposed to exploitation by workers, by outsourcing, by doing things like short-term contracts and etc. All of those particular holes have been well thought, and they've been included and plugged into the system. So we do have actually a pretty good working system of labor relations. And really, it's got to do with the manner in which they are applied. And sadly, I think there's a missing part of the existing labor law that's not being used enough. And that is a thing called the Workplace Forum. The Workplace Forum is an idea that was put into the labor law about 20 years ago to enable the organized labor with their employees, with their members and businesses to work together on a collaborative
care of their members.
Right.
Because in the Southern Africa, countries like Botswana, Eswatini, even Lesotho, those countries are far away in terms of security in their countries. South Africa, I corner. You can even see our police. They are stressed, these people. They are stressed. They are having lots of debts. They can't even finance their children's education. It's a problem.
Right. James, appreciate it and welcome. Joseph in Mokopane, hi.
Good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead, Joseph.
Yes, my departing point will be that the demand for the higher wages should be balanced with the productivity of labor. Because if there's no if there's no balance between the two, there will be a problem. Yes. On the other hand, because the government is a non-profit making organization, when dealing with this type of issue of employment, they should have enough budget, enough finance to be able to hire additional employees.
Right.
But not to say that because you want money, you want more increase, I won't be able to employ more people because of your demand. And that is very much misplaced. I think the general here is being capitalistic. Thank you.
Appreciate your calls. Thank you very much. Dr. Vavi, appreciate you. Thank you. Sister Nhlanhla, thank you for coming. And Patrick, much appreciated. Thank you for your interventions this evening. More news after the break here on the Late Edition. Stay with us.